Okay, we are live. I am very excited about tonight's community conversation. As we do with all of these, before we dive into this evening's conversation, just want to share a couple of things that are going on in our community right now. Number one, COVID-19. We are facing this global pandemic that seems to not end, and right now we are seeing a surge in cases. Right now, our positivity rate is 8.5%. Our new case count for today is new cases of 143. I just want to say a couple of things. There's been a lot in the news recently about the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, as well as just vaccines in general. I just want to say I personally have received now both of my shots for my vaccine. I did have Pfizer. I will tell you the only side effect I really had was a sore arm. And after the second shot, I would say a somewhat, not significant, but a little bit more than a lightly sore arm. I just can't urge people enough to practice common sense, wear a face covering, practice social distancing, practice just being a good neighbor. Make sure that those who are around you have the information that they need. Make sure that if you're not registered for the vaccine, that you do get registered. And I'll make a huge plea for those in the age group of 30 to 45 years old. We need you to get vaccinated. And you can simply register at www.wchd.org. It takes you 3 to 5 minutes. They will email and or call you, and they will help you get registered and get an appointment to get a vaccine. You can also call. You can call the COVID hotline, and that's 815-319-6705. The last thing I want to mention before we get to this great conversation with Phyllis and Scotty is we several months ago approved an agreement with a company to build a solar farm on a long vacant quarry land over on the west side of Rockford called Horseman Quarry. This is off Winnebago Street, Winnebago, Auburn area, for those familiar with it. And it's been long vacant, and now we're going to see that they're starting to move the earth right now to build the solar farm, which is really exciting. So having that land activated is wonderful, but the neat thing that we believe is so great about this is what we as a city will not only get paid for their use of the land, but more importantly, 400 low-income families will receive approximately 75% reduction of their energy bills because of this initiative. So we are really excited about this. It's a great use for the land, brings some revenue to the city, and it saves residents money. It seems like a win all the way around. So with that, let's get to our conversation this evening. I couldn't be more excited to join friends Phyllis and Scotty from the Liam Foundation. And I just want to take a moment and have Phyllis and Scotty introduce themselves. I'll give a minute of opening remarks about our topic at hand, and then we'll dive into some questions. So Phyllis, do you want to begin?
Sure. Thanks for having us. I'm Phyllis Gallisath. I use the she, her pronouns, and I'm from the Liam Foundation as well as PFLAG Rockford. The Liam Foundation, we started about a year ago, right before all this craziness started with COVID. So it's been a wild ride, but we're very excited to be here as the first LGBTQ resource center in Rockford.
Scotty?
Awesome. My name is Scotty. I am the vice president of the Liam Foundation. I use the pronouns she and her. I'm very excited to be in partnership with Phyllis on this amazing journey, bringing an LGBT resource center here to Rockford, as well as all of our wonderful e-board and committee members that help us do what we do every day in the Rockford area.
Wonderful. Well, my name's Tom McNamara, Mayor of the City of Rockford. Really honored to be with Phyllis and Scotty. And first, just on behalf of the city, thank you for starting the Liam Foundation. And I know, Phyllis, for you, it's turning significant pain into significant purpose. And both of you are incredibly courageous and inspiring, and just want to say thank you. We at the city understand we got into this work really late. We, I believe, have made some progress over the last several years, but we also understand we have a long way to go and need to really be guided by people with lived experience. So I'm excited for this conversation, excited to learn more myself, and hopefully us together with a whole host of other citizens can help improve the city of Rockford.
Absolutely. So today we're going to talk about the HRC MEI, which stands for the Human Rights Campaign Municipal Equality Index. So this is just a way that we can measure the things that need to be done or have been done or that we're doing in the city to make sure that we're serving the LGBTQ population and we're making things equal for them. So the reports we're going to talk about are a measurement of those things. So the MEI examines how inclusive municipal equality, municipal laws, policies, and services are for LGBTQ people who live and work there. Cities are rated based on non-discrimination laws, the municipality as an employer, municipal services, law enforcement, and the city's leadership, public positions on equality. So I know when you were running your campaign, we even met before you were in this position in the office, and we discussed, that this was of importance to you. So I'm really happy that we started this relationship early on. I was in the beginning of PFLAG at that time, so things were kind of new to me too. So I'm really glad that we've built this relationship and been able to make some progress. So we just wanted to hear from you, like what is the importance to you, and why is this something that you wanted to work on?
Yeah, so if you don't mind, I'll probably answer it in two different ways. One, I'll answer it more about just a scorecard. So the Human Rights Campaign, it's independent, it's objective, and they are grading us. And I think they're grading us from a standpoint of how can you improve, not, hey, this is really bad. And so it's a positive thing. And I think the other piece to that is it provides some purpose, a time to purposefully focus on issues that are critical to our community. And I think it allows us to take a second to stop, to pause, to reflect, and to improve. And I would say overarching, outside of just a simple scorecard, and I think this is probably most critical, is we're not doing this to get a certain score. We are doing this to improve the lives of our employees and of our citizens, and to really be a good public organization and good public citizen and partner to everyone who calls Rockford home.
Absolutely. I think that's important to point out too, that while, this is a great tool to use, this isn't, we're not trying to get like a, great GPA or something, or, get the best grade. We're, we want to improve because we know that these results are measurable and that makes, Rockford a better place all around. So I was thinking, Scotty, if you want to talk a little bit about why it's important to our community that we have these things in place.
Yes, I think it's extremely important that we have these things in place so that we're always making sure that the community is being served properly and efficiently, that to their needs. Their needs are oftentimes, sometimes very different from cis heterosexual or people who are not from the community. So keeping people trained on, those kinds of things like applications, making sure that they are gender friendly, or making sure that the town is representing the community so they can see that they also matter in the town. So I think that even, coming from the community, I think that it's seeing this kind of thing happening makes me feel like that the town actually is welcoming to me, because I can see that they care about my needs.
Yeah, and just to add, I do think it's important that communities do put in a focus on this, right? When you go and you look at the site, and we hope citizens will, you'll know not every community even cares enough to participate. And some do it at a very low level, and some are really all-stars in it. And so I think it is important. And we do have comments, and I just want to make everyone aware. We can see your comment. All of them will be posted. We're not deleting any comments. They'll all be posted on. And, you look at, Kristen made a comment and said these numbers really are important. It played an emphasis in where she chose to live. So these are important to people in our community.
Absolutely. That's amazing to hear that, someone came here and seeked out that information prior to moving here. So yeah, it is truly important. So I think what we can do is maybe share some of the scorecards and break that down for people, and so they can kind of get an idea of what we're talking about. I thought maybe we could start with where we were at when you started with a score of 59.
Yep, let me share that. And as I'm sharing that, I'm going to do my best here. Can you see that?
Perfect, yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so it is probably a touch small for some viewing it, so I do apologize for that.
And they are accessible online on the Human Rights Campaign website, so you can easily access those. We just want to kind of give you a look of what it is that they're scoring. It's kind of a little snapshot here of a few different categories. So as you can see, our score was 59 out of 100. And then we made huge strides the following year and gained 20 points.
Want me to share that?
Yeah, please.
Sorry.
No, you're fine. Technology is always fun, isn't it?
And I'll just add, here it is. I'll add though, so the city, just from our standpoint, just so people know the kind of mechanisms behind it, Human Rights Campaign or initiative will email us and contact us early on in the year, almost right after you submit the last year's scorecard. And they'll say, hey, here's where we believe you will be at. If the information that we provide or the score that we give you, you don't believe it's accurate, you have till, let's say, June to dispute that. Mm-hmm. And then we actually have assigned individuals inside the city to work hand in hand with the Human Rights Initiative. So that is Chief of Staff Wester Worry, Sharice Hunter, and quite honestly, many team members will be part of those conversations, because you can see by the scorecard, it touches on different services and efforts for communities. So just want to give some of that background.
Yeah, absolutely. That's good to know. I didn't know all of that either. So thanks for sharing that. I'm sure that, since these are quite broad categories, and it's going through different groups and committees that you have, gathering that information can be difficult. Has the new committee that you created, the Community Relations Commission, have they had anything to do with this as well?
So they certainly do. And I think, let me just educate folks on what the Community Relations Commission is. So this is actually came up again, previous to looking at even a scorecard. We believed we needed to do a better job of connecting with citizens and all citizens. I'll be upfront and say there was some pushback by aldermen because they thought that was their job, and it is. But we wanted to ensure that we had a body that's charged and appointed by the mayor and approved by city council that was very reflective of our city. And so I think there's probably no more diverse board in our community than the Community Relations Commission. And they have done a great job. One of the things that they're tasked to do is hold us accountable. And provide recommendations to improve policy. So this past year, a lot of people watched that they held 17 public meetings on our use of force policy. And they provided recommendations to the chief of police to approve those recommendations. And he accepted, if not all but one or two of those. And so they've been very active and engaged. It took a little bit of time to get them started, but they are very active and engaged right now. And that's really exciting for us. And I think it only makes us a better city.
Awesome. That's great to hear. Yeah, so as we can see when we look at this, that we went up 20 points. So that was when we started working together with PFLAG and the city of Rockford and building that partnership and talking about these things and having these conversations on how can we do better. So, and then now this year, for 2020, we just got the score of 81. So we've made quite a bit of movement in that score, and that's good to see. So I think some of the things we wanted to elaborate on was the Community Relations Commission. So you talked about that. And some of the things that have been done. The proclamation for Pride Month on the 50th year anniversary of Stonewall. We gained some points under the municipality employer as an employer section. So I wanted you to kind of elaborate on those and what kind of work went into that.
Yeah, so some folks look at it and they say, okay, great, you proclaim this. I think, and I really don't want this to be a political discussion, but I think words matter. And I think words matter from those in elected positions. And I think we've seen that at a national level for sure. And hopefully what we're trying to do is say that every single person who calls Rockford home, no matter who you love, no matter how you identify yourself, no matter what race you're affiliated with, you belong here in Rockford and we welcome you. And if that is by simple things of changing the street welcome sign out on I-90 that says all are welcome, or if that's proclaiming June to be Pride Month. Those may seem small, but they're significant. Utilizing, there's few things I actually have power, and I don't think many people realize that. I have power of the microphone, and I have power to convene. And so I think you touched on a couple of them, right? One, the microphone we've touched on, but the ability to convene. We have benefited so much by being, I would say, a partner with Liam Foundation. And I would say almost a pupil of Liam Foundation, and just learning. We have a lot to learn. I personally have a lot to learn. And I think stating that we don't know everything and where can we improve, and Lord knows we have a lot of places we can improve, I think is that first step. So it's been very critical.
Absolutely. I was just trying to catch up on the comments and see if there was anything that we needed to see. Okay. Awesome. So under the section, if you want to just pull up the scorecard for yourself, municipality as an employer, we went from 14 to 22 points. So how did we get some more movement there? What happened that we gained some more points in that section?
Yes, so we had a somewhat weak non-discrimination policy. So we strengthened that, and our one big piece of it is a non-discrimination in our procurement and bidding processes for businesses. And so we have strengthened that. We have assigned individuals to monitor that. And before we really had one person, and you'll note, or I will note, our city lacks a host of things. One is staffing and funding. And so we have 1/3 less staff than all of our comparable communities. So we had one person doing 3 or 4 different jobs, and none of them, and no fault of that individual. But when you do that many different jobs, none of them get done very well.
I know about
that. So we have dedicated staff to monitor this. And now we also have enforcement mechanisms in place. So yes, you could just get a written reprimand like, hey, we believe this may be occurring. We don't like it. Here's a little warning. We may also suspend a business from bidding on city work. We can suspend them for months, a year, 2 years, and then ultimately we can say, you know what, you've shown who you really are, and we just don't want to do business with folks like this. And so that's a huge area where we've improved our score.
And that's improving our area altogether, because that motivates the people that you're working with to do better as well.
Absolutely.
So it's a ripple effect. The next section was the leadership on the LGBTQ equality. We went from 1 to 8 points there. So what was changed in that section? What did we do to improve on that?
So in that section, I'm sorry, I did just take it down. This touches some of that, what you talked about before with proclaiming Pride Month. I would say, I just want to add here, we have amazing businesses all throughout the city of Rockford, right? And I, in the position I'm in, am often asked to go to probably every single ribbon cutting you can imagine, every single naming of anything. And so you have to really decide which ones can you do with your schedule, and then what are those priorities. And I was really fortunate to attend Sabrina Ferguson's ribbon cutting for her brand new salon. And that was one of those that was purposeful. That was, there was, I mean, I love Sabrina. She does a great job. I typically don't go to a lot of salon openings, but her mission and her values, I believe, were the mission and values that we should have as a community. And so I wanted to be present and say, I support not just Sabrina, but I support the community. And I think that's where we need to be purposeful in what we do. And I certainly fall short a lot, but we always need to be purposeful. And I think presence is a big piece of that.
Absolutely. Scotty, did you want to ask a couple questions?
Yeah, I would like, I know there's a little order here, but I want to touch this one first. Transgender includes healthcare benefits are needed. How do we provide that?
Yeah, so Scotty, this is a really good question, one that we as a city have been a little bit frustrated with the human rights campaign on, because we believe we've included those benefits. And so we actually just this year met with a staff member of the Human Rights Campaign and went over explicitly what's going on. Why aren't we getting the points for this? We showed documentation. And so it really came down to, we have offered it since I've been mayor, but it wasn't explicitly stated. So we know that hormone treatments is one example. We know that mental health services is another example. We did not explicitly state those two. What we said is other medical services as necessary. And so we are revising our policies, and we will explicitly state those policies in there. But yes, we certainly have trans-inclusive healthcare benefits, and I believe very confidently that we will receive those points this year.
Awesome.
I can point out one situation when we're talking about the healthcare. We can put that in the, in the wording. But the issue we have in Rockford is that we don't really have many clinics that know how to deal with trans, or I'm intersex, so I'm born both sexes, and I have to go all the way to Chicago to get health care. So even if it's written in that my employer has to have that kind of health care for me, my city isn't providing it for me. How can we fix that?
So that's a really good point. And truthfully, what I would probably need is, one, some more education, and two, I think I probably just need to advocate and speak with some healthcare providers about how can we bring in those critical services. So, I mean, you bring up a great point. There's probably even other things that suffer because of that, right? You think you have a lot more time to travel for that care. So I'm guessing you may have to take time off of your job. So that impacts, it's just a ripple effect. So I can certainly work towards bringing, doing what I can to bring that to our community, and at a minimum, making our current healthcare providers aware that those services are not provided and really should be to the benefit of everyone in our community. Because, and like City of Rockford, we do have, we do provide these services, and if it takes that long for an individual to get the care, that's going to just negatively impact them, and it probably perpetuate the problem. So great point.
Yeah, that's part of the services that we provide at the Liam Foundation, is taking people to appointments or helping with those copays, or just the cost to go, gas and food, because it's an all-day trip, taking off of work, like you pointed out. All of those things make it so that there's just another barrier in place for people from the community to just get regular health care. So that's definitely on our list of things to improve. So we can work together on that.
That'd be very beneficial.
So in the LGBTQ leadership section, do you have any plans or thoughts on hiring a specific liaison for that position within the city? I know you've got people doing 3 jobs and not enough money, and but is that something that you see being worked out soon?
So it is a priority for us, and I won't sit and list all the names, but we, quite honestly, we thought we had someone. We had an amazing employee here, and left for a great opportunity out of state. And so we've now are on the search for that individual, have calls out to City of Rockford staff members to see if they would fill that. The really key thing for us is we want someone who wants to do it, because we don't want to just say, okay, Julie Smith is now the person. And if they don't have a passion, if they're not going to have the care and the empathy and place importance of it, it'll just be another thing that we do for a scorecard. And we don't want that. But it is certainly a priority. And it's my hope that we do get that taken care of.
Awesome.
And I should mention,
it would be another person who's already employed that would fill that role in with the role that they're already doing.
Repeat that. I'm sorry.
So ideally what you would like to do is have someone from the City of Rockford that's currently employed there fill that position.
So that's where we're going to first. And, you know, if we can't, then we'll look at plan B and C. But that's what we would look to first.
Okay.
And I just want to say a lot of people are putting in the chat, what's the name of the salon? And I'm sorry for not mentioning it. It's Meta Beauty Collective. It is right on Charles Street near DeTulio's. Great place. Visit it. Patronize it.
Awesome.
Yes, I can't wait to go check it out. Scotty, did you have some other questions and points you wanted to bring up?
I mean, can you give us some more kind of goals you have to moving us forward, and the LGBTQ forward in the Rockford area that we may not even be part of this chart that we're going over, but do you have any other kind of things that you have planning coming up that will improve the LGBTQIA community?
Yeah. So, you know, one thing is we look at the Family Peace Center. And I do want to say a sincere thank you to you guys for doing kind of an audit of the Family Peace Center and providing some really wonderful direction there. We won a grant, and we know that in our community, in every community, people can be victims, and you can also be multi-victims. And we are going to be putting a strong emphasis on how we can provide case management and services to people who, and specifically younger adults and youth who have experienced multi-victimization with an emphasis on LGBTQ individuals. And I would also urge anyone who's watching this and Liam Foundation to help us spread the word. We're trying to make sure that our staff at the Family Peace Center and at the City of Rockford is very reflective of the communities that we serve. So please keep an eye out. Those postings are often on the City of Rockford website, as well as places like Indeed and things of that nature. But we want a workforce that's reflective of our community. So that's one specific area. If you guys don't mind, I'd love to ask you, are there communities that you believe are really good models that we could look at, that you look at that community and you know their policies, their practices, and the initiatives that they have are inclusive?
I don't know, quite honestly, specifics. I know rural areas obviously experience disparities at higher rates. So us being a more rural area, we face those things. I think that we can do better as long as we're conscious about it. And I think it has to come from people living in the area that are pushing for these things and that want that to change. So honestly, I'm so involved in our community. I don't get enough time to do an assessment like that, but that's actually a good idea to look into things like that and to see what other communities are doing. I know that's something that Zach and I had talked about when we were doing these, and I know he did a lot of research into stuff like that. So I think that is an important thing to look into.
Are there, can I ask you another question? Yeah. And do you call those that use your service clients, customers? I just want to make sure I'm using the right.
We call them family, but yeah.
All right. You for services. I love that, by the way. When your family members come to you for services, what are those areas that you hear frequently that the city can improve? I'm not saying I have those answers today, but I'm constantly trying to learn what we can be doing better. And I know there's a lot out there that we can do better. So what are some of those areas that you frequently hear?
Well, we definitely know that the youth and the young adults are really suffering in our area in many ways. The LGBTQ community, especially the trans and non-binary community, and especially those people in those communities that are people of color. We see a lot of abandonment from families within our communities. So, and that's kind of why we've adopted all of these people as our family members, because sometimes they just need somebody to know that they've got us to count on. They can come to us and they can ask us questions, and that we're there to support them through whatever those things are. We see a lot of homelessness. We see a lot of drug addiction. We see a lot of excessive force with the police. We see a lot of situations where young folks are put in dangerous situations with the police because, as we know, within our city, all the things that have happened across the nation, queer communities and people of color are coming out and standing up for themselves, and they're trying to get their voices heard. And in doing that, they're putting themselves in danger. And so not only are they possibly homeless or underemployed, unemployed, facing all these problems, they're also now facing these problems of not being able to stand up and have a voice. So I know we're going to discuss what the policing situation and how we can dismantle the systematic issues. We know that Tom McNamara didn't create this problem, but how are we going to fix it as a community? How are we going to really have these tough conversations and really say, we have a problem here in Rockford with policing, that there is a disconnect between understanding the underserved communities. So how do we get our police trained properly? How do we undo the things that have been done before us? How do we retrain? How do we untrain? How do we make these things happen? So, I mean, that's a lot of questions. That's a lot.
It is, but they're all good questions. And, truthfully, Phyllis, I think you know me well enough. I don't have all the answers, right? But I would say probably a couple of things that I come to mind is, number one, admit that we're far from perfect, and that we have problems. And I've done that on numerous occasions. And I think we certainly are well aware that we have a lot of areas to improve. Some areas far more than others. I think there's some areas that, quite honestly, we do some things that are national best practices. And in other areas, we fail mightily our citizens. And so I would say the first is admitting it. And when you say, how do we get to that conversation? I'd say the first is admit it. The second is we got to take a step towards one another. I think there is so much polarization and politicalization of every single thing that I think if I can understand a little bit of where Scotty's coming from, if I can understand and have a little empathy for where Phyllis is coming from, and you both can do the same for me, I think we start this from a level set of, hey, we all love Rockford, right? Otherwise we'd move. Or just sit back in our sofas and complain on Facebook, which I guess some do. But we don't do that. We all love where we're coming from. We also don't like all the problems that exist in it. And I think if we can level set and say, we agree we love Rockford, we agree it's not perfect, instead of yelling at each other, let's figure out some ways that we can make it a little bit better today. And then we build on that each and every day. Because quite honestly, as you started out with, these issues have lasted not just in Rockford, everywhere, for hundreds of years. The idea that we are going to fix them all in one day or 1 year or 4 years, it's just not realistic. But we can make strides towards doing it each day. And so I guess that's where I think we need to start some of the conversations. And I think we also need to start from an understanding that our ideas don't have to be mutually exclusive. I think there are a lot of good things that happen right in the middle that we can come together on.
I know we talked about the LGBTQ liaison for the city, but what about specifically for the police and the task force? Maybe, is there any talks of that? What does that look like?
Yeah, educate me a little bit on what you mean by the task force.
So one of the last, I think it's the last score on the card is around an LGBTQ police liaison or task force. So it could be a person or a team that is making sure that, we got our checks and balances, that the police department is receiving these types of trainings, and that they're, they have someone to hold them accountable to these issues.
Absolutely. So I'd be very open to that idea of a task force. And I wonder, going back to the Community Relations Commission, it's actually led by an openly gay man, and there's multiple individuals on it who are LGBTQ representatives. I'd be very open to that. So I think we should certainly have further discussions about that. And maybe, I know you did a great audit of the Family Peace Center. We should probably have you do something similar to that for maybe some of our policies and procedures. Quite honestly, not that you would have fun doing this, but our code of ordinances and other aspects.
I'm happy to, absolutely.
Because we don't always do it well, but I think we do our best when we are guided and follow people with lived experiences and experts in those fields. And truthfully, I'm not either one of those, right? In this specific arena. So would certainly lean on the Liam Foundation and your expertise, and probably many others, to make us better.
I really think the formula for the Peace Center, and I admire Jennifer Ketchpalia. She's one of my personal heroes in real life. I think she's amazing. And I think the care and the thoughtfulness and the planning and really reaching out to people with lived experience and building that Peace Center the way they have is really a formula that could be used in other ways. We're working with people at the Peace Center who have been abused or, in these specific situations, but we're looking at policing, or we're looking at, the city as a whole. How can we take those things that we've done and we've built the Peace Center around? How can we do that when we're looking at task force for the police, or liaisons or things like that? How can we really take that formula that they have and use that for those other things?
I think that's dead on, and I don't want to get ahead of myself, but I think about two specific initiatives that I hope to start very soon. One is a reentry initiative. Those citizens who are returning to our community, who we want to return, who we want to live productive lives and be good mothers and fathers, aunts and uncles, and citizens. We hope that our reentry program is guided by those with lived experiences. And the other aspect is youth prevention. We have started a number of programs, if it's Step Up, if it's No Entry, that we're now a Georgetown initiative, or if it's Camp Hope. But we need to make a hard pivot and put a huge emphasis on our youth. I say this with all due respect to all who are involved. But our community has some wonderful initiatives that are going on, let's say, for an example, in education. We have wonderful early childhood education initiatives. We have great read by third grade level initiatives. We have wonderful programs like middle school initiatives through the United Way. We have the pathway system through high school. We have Rockford Promise. Quite honestly, those are all phenomenal. But if our young kids don't have the social and emotional wherewithal and health from the day they walk in, none of that really matters. And so I think we need to make a strong emphasis moving forward on youth. I think we need to make a strong emphasis on social and emotional health of our youth and really our whole community.
I think that's a really great point, and I think that's something to consider when you're looking to replace Chief O'Shea. Someone who's really focused on youth and thinking of the future, and knowing that, if someone that is a young person and they've things happen in their life, that doesn't mean that they can't make changes, or that because this happened, now you're on this path forever. That, there is an opportunity for growth. There is an opportunity to do better and to have more chances, and that you're not just pushed aside because you've made a mistake or you've been in a situation that has been harmful. So do you have I don't know if you had any prior knowledge to Chief O'Shea's resignation, or if you've been thinking about this, or if this is something new to you. I don't know where you're at in that process, but if you want to talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. So one, not new to me. Quite honestly, I talk to Chief O'Shea every single day, sometimes more than I want to. No, so the day wasn't new. This year wasn't new. I think he's done some really wonderful things for our department and for the city of Rockford. I also think one of the wonderful things he's done is put people in leadership positions and rotated them around to broaden their depth of experience. He's increased training for our officers, which was sorely needed, and did a host of really good things. But with that said, talking about specifically the process to get a new chief. One, people should know, I don't select who the new chief is. Some days I wish I could, but I don't. We actually have 3 citizens who make up the Fire and Police Commission. Mm-hmm. Those 3 citizens, 2 of which are brand new, and 1 has been there less than a year, or just over a year, I believe. So one individual is Sam Schmitz. He is a former CEO of Goodwill. He's been a human resource director. He's been a CEO and then was a CEO of Goodwill, and now is on this commission. The second individual is Ingrid Hartgrove. She is, I believe she worked at Swedish American for 42 years in their HR department. So she has a lot of, and worked very closely actually with their discrimination efforts and non-discrimination efforts that Swedish American has taken on over the years. And so I think she'll bring great tools and assets. And the third is Rudy Valdez. And Rudy, I think everyone knows Rudy, one of the nicest, most thoughtful people in our community. And he is engaged, I think, pretty much on every board in our community. And he works now at Caney Aerospace, but has experience managing, hiring, and firing. And I think people should also know those positions are unpaid. Those positions are incredibly time intensive, from when you are simply hiring recruits and reviewing those. That could be literally volunteering 40 hours a week for 2, 3, 4 weeks at a time. Now talk about time intensive. Hiring 1 chief is incredibly time intensive. Now they'll be trying to hire 2 new chiefs. They've committed to doing a national search. They've committed to having community engagement as part of it. If you recall, when we hired Chief O'Shea, I was an alderman at the time, but when we hired Chief O'Shea last time, they whittled down the number of candidates to a handful, and they brought those candidates to our community and allowed citizens to come and meet with those candidates. So I think you will see community engagement, community input in that process.
Is there a way to contact those people with concerns or recommendations or whatever in this process? If concerned citizens had things that they wanted to address with those people, is there a way that they can contact them through the website of the city?
Yeah, absolutely. Their contact information, 2 of them are brand new, so I'm hoping that it's up to date. I'll make sure it is. I'm being told it is up to date. So you can go to our website and you can get that contact information. That's www.rockfordil.gov. And you can get their information. Also, if anyone wanted to email me, I would be happy to simply forward that on, and that's thomas.mcnamara@rockfordil.gov. And Phyllis, if some may not feel comfortable writing me, and Scotty, if folks don't feel comfortable writing me and they write you, if you want to ensure that that information got to the 3 fire police commissioners, I would ensure that that information gets to them.
I do have a question, and I do have a question. Since we're talking about the police stuff, I was sitting with one of the people who work for the politicians, and we were talking about the situation if a trans individual went to jail. And so I'm curious, if a trans individual went to jail, what cell would they go in? Because they couldn't answer that question. They were curious themselves. How does that work here in Rockford?
So, Scotty, I'll never lie to you. I don't know. City of Rockford doesn't manage the jail. That's Winnebago County, and that falls under Sheriff Caruana. I will find that information out for you, and I can email you that. And if you wouldn't mind sharing that information with the community, I would love that. I will make a note of it and make sure that we get you that answer. We'll try to get it to you by tomorrow.
Thank you so much.
Of course.
I wanted to read one of the questions in the comments too. It says, what resources are there for those employees who identify as LGBTQ+ who experience discrimination against them to report those businesses or take action against them? Many trans and queer folks are seen as unemployable by many businesses downtown.
Yeah, so for City of Rockford, we have developed support groups at the city. So one, we have a support group made up of their peers that they can talk about issues. Now, if it's a complaint, and hopefully I'm assuming accurately, Phyllis, you're talking about a significant like legal type complaint that they may have, not just something that would be going on a day basis. So complaints against let's say someone has a complaint against an employee, they can be referred to that employee supervisor, to the City of Rockford Legal Department that's headed up by Nick Meyer, or to our Human Resource Department that's headed up by Sharice Hunter. Then we would investigate that and determine if a city policy was violated. And if so, that next steps, we would determine what type of sanctions they would have. For businesses in our community, you could certainly make us aware, and we could make other organizations like the Better Business Bureau and depends, maybe Department of Labor and other organizations that depends on what that complaint is. It's pretty broad. Yeah. So depending on what it is, we would make sure that that information gets to the proper authority so that it can be investigated and potentially have some sanctions come down.
I'm just looking at some of the other questions here.
So can I ask you questions while you look for those? You mentioned a whole host of areas that your family has come to you with concerns. One was homelessness. Do you work and partner with our Human Services Department with like Antoinette Parham, who's the director there, or is there ways that we could help you with that?
We do, use any of the organizations or services that are available to us. The problem that we run into, there's a broad problem that we run into with everybody, and then there's the problem specific to homelessness. But the broad problem we run into is that there aren't enough education within the organization, so they don't know how to serve the LGBTQ population. And there may not be services specific to the LGBTQ population. So for the homeless programs, specifically, we look at youth homelessness. We have the Bridge, which is for boys, and then we have the house that's for girls. So if you have a non-binary person or you have a trans person that doesn't feel comfortable being in gendered spaces, you have some of those problems. There's a lot of barriers within how the city has defined homelessness. So a lot of people in our community may be sleeping on the street one night, a car another night, a couch another night. They may be moving around. They may not be every night sleeping under a bridge. So the definition of homelessness is a little bit too narrow for what we see. And especially when we're talking about youth, they don't know how to navigate systems. They don't understand what's needed to go into a place and fill out an application for something or ask for services. If they've never been shown these things, they don't really even know how to access them. So I think accessing some of these programs is intimidating, and it's fearful for them, and especially being from the community and knowing that there's not the education there, it just can be very overwhelming for a young person having to go in and say, not only am I homeless and I need help, but I'm also trans, or I'm also, these are identities and I need help. And that's just it's really scary.
So at the beginning, you said how the city defines it. Do you know, is that a City of Rockford definition, or is that based on the funding the City of Rockford gets from like the federal government?
Yeah, I think it might be based on the funding, because we recently were working with the Family Peace Center on a grant, and that grant, that specific federal funding had a different definition of homelessness. So the way we could use that money was a lot more broad. And, that kind of is what we're at the mercy to sometimes when we're looking at funding is what have they defined that we can use this money for, in what way? So I do believe it is probably a funding thing. But there are other funds out there that define it more broadly. So I think it's just being a little more careful and meticulous and looking for that funding and finding ways that we can broaden what that definition of homelessness is. And having it more open to people, because turning someone away and saying, well, you're not homeless enough, it's like
It's not.
You're just kind of, you don't have a home, or you do. And if you don't have a home, a safe home. And that's another thing, sometimes we have young folks that have a roof over their head, but they're not really in a safe situation, and finding them safe ways to exit those situations also. And, we can't advise them, hey, go sleep on the streets, because then you're actually homeless and then we can help you, So sometimes it's those barriers that you don't realize until you're actually doing that work, how difficult that can be to get through those.
One other question. I don't have the exact number with me, so I apologize, but I know we've now served a significant number of LGBTQ members at the Family Peace Center. Do you know offhand, I won't say names or anything, but do you know offhand if their experience has been a warm welcome and good one for them, or if there's areas we can improve?
Did you say specifically about the Peace Center?
Yes.
Oh yeah, I think the Peace Center's doing great. I've been there a few times. I think Megan's also great. Great staff, for one. You have people who are very passionate, very educated, very much make this work, their life, and they really care deeply about it. I think that makes a huge difference. So I think they're doing a great job, as far as I've seen.
And we've worked with Jennifer, and we know she's a strong ally, so we don't have any, we would definitely send our family members there, because we know, we know some of the people there, and we know that they're allies. They do more than just go into work and say, I'm gonna help our community. They actually are doing it outside of work as well. And so they don't just show us they're doing it for a paycheck. They're showing us they're doing it because it's for their passion and they actually care. So we're very confident in the Peace Center.
Awesome. That's wonderful to hear. And I think I don't know if it was Phyllis or Scotty said that process to get it started, I think it just lays the proper framework and the groundwork and the infrastructure that's needed. And then things can excel. The problem is with so many of these other things, that infrastructure, everything's been built. So you're trying to work to either fix it while it's going or tear it down and kind of rebuild it all while things are still moving. Makes it so much more difficult. Do want to address just one question. It looks like Sky Gia Garcia said, my answer about inclusion shows I know nothing. We aren't going to solve the problem in 2 to 4 years. I just want to be clear. That was an aspect of my answer. But we need to, what I said was, we need to take a step closer, show some empathy on both sides of whatever that issue is, and show that we do have some commonalities there. We do also have to be realistic and understand we're not going to change every problem in a day, a month, 2 years or 4 years. But I think those are things like a good example. How we respond to mental health crisis calls. We didn't change that actually in 1 day or 1 month. It actually took several years, and then just recently we started this pilot program, and we hope to have full funding. Or if it's, we talked a lot about the Family Peace Center. If it's reallocating funding from police, that doesn't happen overnight. That actually happens over months of negotiating with aldermen to get them to reallocate funds from, let's say, a police department to a Family Peace Center and domestic violence focus. Or if it's increasing a human services budget, that doesn't happen overnight, but we have an increase of human services budget. So there's tons of areas that we need to improve. And it doesn't mean that we don't do anything for those 2 to 4 years. We do stuff every day, but we also have to be realistic.
I think too is one thing to point out is that it's very difficult to go on live and say, you know what, I'm still learning. I don't know everything, and ask questions and admit that you don't know something, because that's a sign right now that you want to learn and that you gave us this time here today. I'm in the community. I'm born both sexes. My community is not well taught, and I'm still learning myself. But the important part is for someone to step up and say, I don't really know this, but I want you to teach me. That shows that you care, and it shows that there is a great possibility that change will happen because you're willing to step up and say, I don't know, but will you teach me? How can we do this together? And hold all of these meetings on the Rockford page and give us, our community, these answers, and when you don't know them, come back and give them to us. So I'm very proud of you, Mayor, for doing this for us and for actually caring. I remember when me and Phyllis went up to the mental illness event and we told you of this idea that we had. We didn't know how it was going to get here, and from day one you gave us a card, you check in on us. And so I want to say that I do appreciate at least that you are willing to learn and willing to listen to our community and willing to give us the resources that to help our community.
Well, feelings mutual, and both of you are tremendous citizens who let me know when you think things are going in the right direction, but also will let me know gently, sometimes not as gently, when you think we have areas to improve. So I just encourage you to continue to do it. Like I said at my first comments, we have a ton of areas to improve as a organization. I do as a person, and I think we do as a society. So I think we only get there if we work together and constantly work towards that improvement. Any other last questions you have of me? We're just inching closer to that hour mark that we have.
Yeah, I think my last final thought is we already have this community relations committee in place.
Yep.
How can we utilize them and get them working immediately with this new police chief incoming to brainstorm ideas to really take a look at and assess what we're doing. I know you've done some of this, recently, and they made some recommendations, but how can we really get people of lived experience involved? How can we get people who have been through the jails in Rockford, people who have been arrested by the police? How can we get these people's voices to be heard and their stories to be told so that we can really address the issues that are happening from a citizen's point of view?
Yeah, so good point. So in some areas we've done that. We've probably got knocked a little bit for how we chose to do it. We held some public listening sessions, and then truthfully, I was knocked a little bit for holding private listening sessions. Only reason we held private, just so everyone's aware, is we were asked to. We had individuals who really wanted to share their story, but didn't feel comfortable doing it in a public setting. And so we certainly have taken that information. We also, I think one of the ways that we do it is you admit a problem, right? And one was we weren't very transparent when it came to the complaint process. And when you're not transparent about that process, or what the results are of that process, people lose trust. I think we've made some progress here. We've actually created a link on our website that'll list out in a 2-year rolling period the number of complaints we have. So, off the top of my head, I think over the last 2 years, we've had like 305,000 calls for service, and we've had just under 300 complaints. About 65% of those complaints were officers complaining about other officers and how they acted or performed their duties. But we can also look at that one of two ways, right? We can say, oh my gosh, look at us, we're perfect, we got everything right, everyone just sit back and relax, it's all good. But that's not right. That's not where we're at. We need to also understand that when you file a complaint, there's some fear that may come into that, some nervousness, some apprehension. You may not want to go to a police station to file a complaint against the police. That's a very real fear, right? You may not trust that anything's ever going to take place after your complaint. So we created the site. You can submit complaints online you can submit complaints online, and also you can see, and we don't provide the identity. It doesn't say Phyllis complained on this date. We just group them in kind of pie chart format so that you can see, 33% of the complaints are about excessive force or whatever that number is. And I'm just making up numbers to be clear. And so I think that's part of it. I would say the other is we need to get the Liam Foundation back in front of the Community Relations Commission and even touch on that task force idea that you brought up previously, and how we can get the Liam Foundation part of that task force, have representatives from Liam Foundation and maybe representatives of the Community Relations Commission so that we can have those conversations.
Absolutely. We're always willing to work with you and help in any way that we can. And we thank you for your time and having these conversations. I know sometimes it's not easy to talk about these things, but I hope we can keep the conversation going, and I hope we can keep pushing for the things that need to be happening in our city. And Scotty, did you have anything to add?
Do you have an idea of like how much money the city kind of like puts into the LGBTQI community? And when I say that, I'm like, how much does the city spend per year for proper trainings on the LGBTQIA? Where is the money being pumped into our community? Where from the city, and what is that percentage of that?
Oh, so I don't have the amount of money that we pump into off the top of my head and things like training and of that. I can get those numbers for you, Scotty. I don't know if I'm guessing I could break them down pretty specifically. But for broadly how much we put in to the community, we don't track it that way. Doesn't mean we can't start to track it that way, but right now we just simply don't. I can tell you that all of our staff will be going through training, and quite honestly, we wanted it to start last year, but due to COVID, it was just really difficult to get. And these trainings I don't want to do just trainings that people click buttons and hit yes, 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 and are done. Yeah. And then I can come on here and say we did the trainings. We want in-person, meaningful interactions and really education. And so we've partnered with groups like Eliminate Racism and others to provide training on cultural self-portrait, defining racism and prejudice, systematic racism, institutional racism, microaggressions, implicit bias, white privilege, and white fragility, where all staff, not just police, not just fire or public safety folks, but all staff will be going through those trainings. So I can certainly get you the amount of money that we put towards trainings, but the other numbers, I'd either need a little bit more specificity or it would take me some time to get for you.
Thank you. I mean, I would be curious to know that. And I think when we go to our community and we want to say what the city is doing for us, I think that would be a great thing to show them and say, you know what, the city of Rockford pumps this amount of money into our community. This is what they're doing for us. I think that would be beneficial for us to be able to see.
Absolutely. I would urge just one thing. When you talk about like businesses and pumping money into businesses, we have some really good initiatives right now and programs that we can help businesses. We have Business First, that a business, someone who may have a business idea and it's getting close to a reality for them, come forward. Or you have a business already and you want to expand, come forward and meet with Business First. We have great resources at the Small Business Development Center, I should say great partners, and Business First. You'll get to talk to every department with the city of Rockford, including the Winnebago County Health Department. I think it's now called Four Rivers Sanitation Department. It's going to take some time to get used saying, but you can meet with all of them all at one time and get their input and their thoughts all at one time to hopefully make it easier for you to open or expand that business here. And I would also always urge folks, reach out to Carl Franzen, our Director of Economic Development, and look at those initiatives or those funding opportunities that we have. We hope over the next several months we'll be done with laying out the process. We've approved the policy, but now we're developing the process with Anquinette Parham and Carl Franzen regarding our cannabis revenue. We've allocated 100% of that cannabis revenue to distressed communities and individuals most impacted by the failed war on drugs. And so that's hundreds of thousands of dollars that we're going to be investing. Some will go to initiatives like reentry initiatives or no entry initiatives, but other dollars can go to economic development. So we will have now a funding stream and mechanism to put in place. But I'll just say, truthfully, Anquinette over in Human Services, as you can imagine, through the pandemic has been waylaid with the amount of work that's needed to support and provide relief to citizens, and Carl the same in economic development. So it's taken us a little bit longer, I think, than we all wanted to, but that process will be rolled out this year so that people can start applying for those funds, organizations and businesses and individuals.
Awesome.
That's awesome.
Well, I really appreciate you guys taking the time to be with me, help educate me, and please, I meant it, appreciate all the work that you do, specifically the work that you do when you say, hey, you're on the right track, or even more importantly, hey, you're on the wrong track. It is appreciated, so continue those texts and calls and emails, and just thank you for the work that you do. You touch people's lives in a very real way that last forever for them. So I just want to say thank you on behalf of the city of Rockford and all of our citizens for the great work that you do.
And thank you guys for supporting us as well.
Absolutely. You have
Thank
a
you
wonderful day.
for your questions and comments.
Yeah, thanks.
All right.
Thank you.